this is Corn, and this is my honest review of Kokoro by Sōseki Natsume. So, before I start, I kind of want to start about how it's structured, because that's kind of one of the main parts of Kokoro, is its unique structure. So Kokoro starts, and it's the interaction between the sensei and the student, it's the interaction between the student and his parents when he goes home, and then it's the interaction between sensei and his past, for example. So, there's two main characters in the book, I guess, to start. There's this young student who goes to the University of Tokyo, and then there's this sensei who also went to the University of Tokyo, but much earlier. So we start off, and it's this sensei giving advice to the student. It's him giving some of his tidbits of what he's gone through, his past, I suppose. And we learn of the student and of his youthfulness on Earth. It's more so his youthfulness in his interactions with other people, but through these interactions we learn less and less about the student and more about the sensei, because that's kind of who the novel is focused around. So as we go throughout the novel, it's sensei and the student kind of religiously going to the sensei for advice on things in his life, things that he wants to talk to the sensei about. And as we move forward, we learn more about sensei, and the second part is the student leaving sensei. So the student leaves to go see his parents, and then his parents are like, oh, your father isn't actually as sick as we portrayed in the letter that we sent to you asking you to come here, so you're good to go, I suppose. And so the young student goes back to Tokyo to talk more with the sensei, to go back to his university studies. And in this interaction, we hear that the sensei's wife's dad had the same kidney disease that his dad has, and that it comes silently, and it's going to get worse and whatnot. And as we go throughout this little section where the student is back in Tokyo, the sensei kind of promises to tell the student more about his past coming up in the future. But right after this interaction, the student has to leave again because his father is deathly ill again. And so the student leaves to go take care of his father in the countryside, the woodlands of Japan. And about 3/4 of the way through him taking care of his father, he receives a telegram from the sensei saying, like, you need to come back to Tokyo. Well, the student's a bit caught up with his father because his father is about to pass away, and he's trying to make preparations. And he sends a telegram back, like, I can't come. I'm sorry. I can't. And then the sensei sends a telegram again and is like, don't worry about coming. And it's just kind of this weird interaction. And so we get a little bit more of the student taking care of his father, and then the sensei just outright sends this long letter to the student, and it kind of starts off with, if you're reading this, I'm already dead. That's the basic premise. And so the student freaks out and leaves and goes on a train and then opens this letter from the sensei. Well, the problem that I have with this book, I believe, is we never hear anything of anything again, because we presume from the letter that sensei wrote the student that he killed himself because of some trauma later that I'll get into. But we never hear again of whether his father dies. It's this long letter from sensei, and then it ends. Outright ends. So it's like this semi-thick book, and it's just, hey, I gotta go, and then leaves. And now he's going back to the sensei, who we presume is already dead, and who sent him a long letter, and the rest of the book is just this letter. So moving into the trauma that I was speaking of that the sensei had from his past, the beginning of the novel concerning sensei's past is a lot to do with he was cheated out of his inheritance because his mother and father died, and his uncle was taking care of him and taking care of his inheritance because he wasn't of age yet. Well, he was kind of cheated out of his inheritance because the house that he lived in was wrapped up in the money somehow, and eventually most of the money that the sensei had from his parents went to the uncle because he kind of slowly moved into the house. And so belligerent of his other people, of his family, he moves to Tokyo, which is why he ends up in Tokyo where the young student meets him. Well, he attends the university, he moves into this boarding house with a roommate, And the roommate comes later on, but it's kind of this love story of the sensei and the daughter of the landlord, and the roommate falls in love with the daughter of the landlord, even though the sensei hasn't been in love with her and hasn't professed his love. And the student, after the sensei is kind of like, you can't love her, I'm going to profess my love, and then outright proposes to her, the roommate kills himself, and sensei is the first person to come and see this, and it brings him quite a lot of trauma. And the biggest part of this novel that is great, in my opinion, I've already kind of spoken on what I didn't enjoy of it. The biggest part that I enjoyed was how the characters reacted to things and how they interacted with other people. The way that the sensei talks with his roommate and is kind of subverting him in certain ways when it comes to his love story, it's very human. Even though, like, obviously humans aren't as diabolical sometimes as the sensei and the roommate were, it's very human. The sensei has inner monologues about who he is, why he's doing things, what he feels, and throughout the whole thing you can feel his pain and you can feel his suffering as he has this unrequited love with this landlord's daughter. And honestly, it's an amazing read. I think that anyone who wants to hear this kind of tragic love story should really read this, because it's quite advanced, I suppose. The only thing that I would kind of gripe on with it is the way that the story is told, as I spoke on before, how it kind of abruptly ends. It doesn't really give any closure to the whole story with the student and his father. It doesn't give closure to the sensei even, really, because it goes through his past and then just ends. But in the end, I think there's a reason that it's so popular, and there's a reason that it's one of the most popular books in Japan, is because it really gives a sense of humanism, and it really gives you an idea of the feelings of the author and the feelings of the characters. So I suppose to end this off, I'm just going to read you my review that I wrote in my little book journal fresh after I had read it. And yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts on it, coming in a few months after I read it. So let me read this to you really quick. The book was originally published in 1914, which I found very interesting. I have the Penguin Books version, so I'm sure there's other translations, but my translation was perfectly sufficient. The book centered around this mysterious sensei figure who interacts with a student at the University of Tokyo, and who takes an odd interest in the student's father, who becomes ill with a kidney disease. So he goes to visit him, the student goes to visit him. While away, the sensei kills himself, just as Kei, the roommate that I spoke on, just as Kei did. The sensei had confessed to Kei's love, the landlord's daughter, that he had married her, so he killed himself. All in all, it was really sad, and I rated it a 9.6 out of 10. Honestly, though, like, coming back a few months later, I think that 9.6 out of 10 may be a little bit high, maybe 9.3, 9.4, but in all honesty, a great read. Like, by no means would I not recommend this. This is an amazing read. So I think that's all I have. That's Corn, signing off for Kokoro by Sōseki Natsume.